Hello everyone and welcome to Smart World with CNBC. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue dans Smart World avec CNBC. Je suis ravie de vous retrouver pour ce format 100% hybride. At the top of this program, l'UE affirme qu'Amazon a enfreint les règles anticoncurrentielles. La Commission européenne ouvre une deuxième enquête sur son activité et accuse le géant de la vente au détail d'utiliser les données de ses petits vendeurs. Google publie son rapport sur l'économie numérique. Elle dépassera les 100 milliards de dollars cette année en Asie du Sud-Est. Et on parlera de la bataille entre la nouvelle Xbox et la PlayStation 5. Le marché des jeux vidéo explose en temps de pandémie. C'est parti, let's go! EU to announce antitrust charges against Amazon. La Commission européenne accuse Amazon de pratiques anticoncurrentielles. Elle ouvre une deuxième enquête concernant l'utilisation des données de ses vendeurs indépendants.
The European Commission is planning to announce formal antitrust charges against Amazon, and they're planning to do it today. The case focuses on the online retailer's dual role, both as a marketplace for third-party vendors and as a competitor that sells its own goods. Now, the FT says the EU is looking into how Amazon uses data that it gathers on merchants to compete against them. And this has been one of the themes and complaints that we've heard for such a long time about this idea of third-party sellers using the platform Amazon, leveraging the fact that it has all this data, sees what products are selling, and then in certain cases creates the equivalent of its own white label version, and then arguably advantages that. At the same time, I would say to you, Joe, I don't know how you feel about it, I think Amazon has done a spectacular job, just not only for itself, but in terms of creating this platform and helping, frankly, small businesses around the United States and around the globe. So I think it's going to be a bit of a food fight on this one, but we'll watch it.
So many things to think about with a disruptive company like Amazon. You think about everybody who's disrupted. But you think about that with Walmart or any of those things during progress. But,
sure,
and then you think that they don't pay any taxes, but there's a reason they don't pay any taxes because they're building out so quickly, providing so many jobs, so much shareholder wealth. So there's so many there's so many pluses and minuses to all these companies.
Well, look. You know my view on the taxes. I think actually we should come up with a better way to deal with it. But to me, the alternative for Amazon is to say, okay, we're not going to allow our platform to be used by third-party merchants. Nobody else except
right.
Amazon people can use it. Okay, well then where are we? Then right. What happens to all of those small businesses that have been developed on the back of Amazon, actually? So
this is like your Apple app. This is like your Apple App Store, where the people that get huge distribution on Apple, they're like complaining that they got to pay something for it. You know,
I try to be consistent. I know you.
Both sides have some merit in, I guess, their argument.
La Commission européenne a informé Amazon de son enquête préliminaire. Amazon s'insurge. Dans un communiqué, le géant de la vente en ligne annonce être en désaccord avec les informations de la Commission européenne. Nous continuerons à tout mettre en œuvre pour s'assurer que la Commission ait une compréhension exacte des faits, écrit Amazon. Alors qu'une autre enquête anticoncurrentielle s'ouvre contre Google en Inde, l'entreprise publie un rapport sur l'économie numérique en Asie du Sud-Est. Selon le rapport, l'économie numérique de la région dépassera les 100 milliards de dollars cette année. Stephanie Davis, Google's vice president for the region, was on CNBC.
Yeah, we do think that 5G will have a positive impact across Southeast Asia. If we look back to this year, we got a bit of a surprise, I would say, with Thailand moving forward with at least commercial 5G. Some of us were expecting maybe Malaysia and Singapore to come first. But if we think about the reasons that Thailand chose to forge ahead, it was once again due to COVID. And it was how do you get telemedicine out to the rural areas and to hospitals even faster? So we look at it from a commercial perspective or a health perspective and an education perspective as well. Two categories that we saw really begin to flourish during COVID. We see 5G providing a boost for those, but also when you look at those in the digital economy across Southeast Asia on a consumer basis, they are really plugged in via mobile. More than 90% of the population who is online, they are mobile first and oftentimes mobile only. So 5G will really make a difference. I think also a third area where it will make a difference is with our SMEs or our small merchants across the region. Just as many on the consumer side skipped the laptop generation and went straight to mobile, we're in a position where many can also skip here, businesses, localize data and go straight to the cloud. And that's something that 5G will help us with the region. But I'd like to add, we don't need to wait on it. There's still a lot of opportunity and growth before 5G.
For Southeast Asia, I mean, we talk about the digital divide, right? You could slice it a whole number of ways, but in terms of demographics, age, Southeast Asia is largely young or younger. And in terms of wealth, Southeast Asia enjoys a growing middle class. These two trends, does it make this part of the world, Southeast Asia, it's obviously a positive, but also does it make it an exception compared to other parts of the world?
Well, I do think it is an exception indeed on both of the factors that you just mentioned, but I believe that the exception is overwhelmingly positive. What we see is because of youth and coming back to it being a mobile first or a mobile only region, we see consumers using the internet or using digital very differently in Southeast Asia. And they're really a bellwether. I think that they're showing us what digital economies will become. So this region is shaping the future of digital economies, and I think it's a region that we can look to see what the future holds for us in terms of opportunity. So yes, as you mentioned, diverse population. It is a young population, connected, mobile first, and that is an exception, but shapes what we can see, I think, globally going forward. Lots of opportunity, may I add. Also, 70% are online now, as you mentioned at the beginning, but if we compare that to the internet penetration in other countries like Japan or the UK, where it's above 90%, we still see a lot of headroom. So that changing consumer dynamic will shape what happens between 70 and 90% internet penetration.
Le rapport qui couvre l'Indonésie, la Malaisie, le Vietnam, Singapour et les Philippines indique que la région a ajouté 40 millions de nouveaux utilisateurs Internet cette année. Une augmentation qui porte le total à 400 millions d'internautes dans la région. Désormais, 70% de la population de la région serait en ligne. Alors que l'activité des usines asiatiques reprend peu à peu, Adidas relève la tête au troisième trimestre. Adidas revenues recover in Q3, but warns of sales decline as COVID-19 makes resurgence.
If you look overall, we've improved our profit from the second quarter with 1.1 billion and our revenue growth by 30 percentage points. The outlook we've given is taken in the current context, and if you look upon Europe, and many countries in Europe, including the UK, is in close down. And I do think it's important that we recognize we are still standing in the middle of a pandemic. And if we can trade more or less at the same level as previous years, we're actually quite happy about that. We're still extremely optimistic about the future. And so it's in that context we are guiding the way we're guiding. You also have to take into context that the market went up, almost explosively yesterday based on the COVID vaccine announcement. But overall, we're very happy with the second and third quarter, a great step in the right direction.
Can we talk a little bit about the margin and margin evolution that you're expecting then running through fourth quarter and into early 2021? Because it does look to be strong.
If you looked upon the third quarter, margin was very close to previous years, despite all the challenges we've had. And we expect, as you can see, a gross margin on the same level into the fourth quarter. And what we have focused very much on has been healthy inventory levels across the channel to ensure that we don't have a carryover inventory. And that's why we're managing our P&L and our balance sheet very prudently. And that you can see very clearly, both on the gross margin guidance for the fourth quarter, the actual numbers on the third quarter, but also, the EBIT margin in the third quarter, where you see, as I said, very close to previous quarters. So overall, we believe that the course we've taken with a high focus on a strong balance sheet and a very strong P&L is the right focus in a very volatile market.
Casper, the market this morning seems to also be a little bit concerned about what we're seeing in Asia. APAC sales declined by 7% in the third quarter, with Greater China recording a 5% decrease. Can you give us a bit more color around the absolute latest trends that you're seeing in China and around the region?
We still see a very strong market in China. We experience strong double-digit growth in our D2C business, our direct-to-consumer business in China. We saw a decline in our what we call our franchise business to ensure that, as I said before, we're keeping a very healthy level of inventory positions in China. So we're still very optimistic about China. It has been a great market in the past. It is still a good market for us and will continue to be a good market. And that was really, I would say, substantiated by the double-digit growth we had in our D2C business in China in the third quarter.
Adidas enregistre une forte amélioration séquentielle de ses revenus au troisième trimestre. Plus de 90% des magasins au détail de la société étaient opérationnels ce trimestre, alors que la plupart avaient été fermés pendant plusieurs semaines au cours du deuxième trimestre. Schaffler, entreprise allemande spécialisée dans la production et la distribution de composants mécaniques de précision, publie également ses résultats cette semaine. The company reports strong third quarter 2020. Let's hear more with Schaffler's CEO on CNBC.
The third quarter was clearly driven by the continuous recovery in China, strong demand, in particular in the auto sector, but also in the industrial businesses that we have. Think about the wind, the renewable energy business there. So that was strong, that helped us. But I can also say that in the third quarter, the Americas performed quite well. Also there, auto demand is improving. And it looks like that what we see from the first indications for October and also from November, that trend continues into the fourth quarter. Yes, the crisis is clearly not over. We need to stay tuned, but there is an underlying positive trend that supports the recovery. However, we need to remain cautious, and that's also why the guidance that we have given is conservative, so that we can also cover the uncertainty that still sits within the system.
Klaus, which raises some interesting questions about the decisions that you took back in September and announced, the loss of nearly 4,500 jobs and the intention to close several operations in Germany. Are you still intending to follow through with all of those plans at this point, given that we now see perhaps the opportunity of a vaccine bringing something like normality in the middle of 2021?
Well, we always said we need to distinguish between the tactical measures to cope with a crisis and the more structural measures that we want to put in place to make the company even stronger. And therefore, we will 100% follow through with our structural measures. As you said, we announced them on the beginning of September. They come with a restructuring provision of around 700 million, of which we have booked most of the money in the third quarter, but there's a little bit more to come in Q4. We are targeting an improvement on the cost side and the profitability side of 250 to 300 million. These measures are indispensable. We will definitely follow on with them, and they are there to make the company stronger. They're there to be able to invest into the future. There's a lot of opportunities here coming from the development, and that's why we will definitely continue with these structural measures.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the best growth drivers at the moment in the business? E-mobility for a while has looked very interesting. How is that evolving, and what else is doing well at the moment?
Well, the e-mobility business is clearly one of our key growth areas for the future. We want to be a champion in that area. We have invested a lot. We are seeing that our order book is growing. There's a lot of demand on new technology in that area.
Selon le PDG de Schaffler, la reprise au troisième trimestre a été principalement tirée par les deux divisions automobiles. La tendance du chiffre d'affaires de la division industrielle s'est légèrement améliorée par rapport au premier semestre 2020. PS5 against Xbox Series X, who will win the next generation console race? Même si Sony et Microsoft sont souvent agacés par les comparaisons, les joueurs, eux, les comparent tout le temps. Tout comme les experts de l'industrie d'ailleurs. Dans un contexte de crise économique, plusieurs d'entre eux seront confrontés à un choix entre les deux consoles. Alors laquelle acheter selon les experts? Élément de réponse avec CNBC.
Well, I think it's going to be a real challenging battle. I think both consoles, the new Xbox and the new PlayStation 5, really have tremendous tailwinds behind them due to the pandemic. If I had to give a bit of an edge, I'd probably give it to Microsoft, simply because they have a better backward compatibility story. The form factor is a bit more friendly. It's not quite as out there as the new PS5. But I think it's going to be an extraordinary period for both consoles, actually.
Okay. And does console still remain king? I mean, these wars have been going on since I was playing, which was a long time ago, back in the days of Sega. And I just wonder, with the shift to mobility and mobile gaming, I mean, who's set to win that fight?
Well, mobility certainly is becoming a much bigger component of the overall gaming space. There's no question about it. I think in terms of a real challenge to the traditional consoles, there are two kinds of people. There are people who are console players, and there are people who are mobile game players. Mobile players tend to be a bit more older, a bit more mainstream. Console users tend to be much more aggressive in terms of the requirement for really, cutting-edge graphics and real high-performance systems. So I think the cloud category, which obviously is going to be a big deal over time, that will be aided as 5G comes online, and the infrastructure of 5G is built on because of the latency advantages that 5G has. But I think it's going to be some time before that really has a dramatic impact on the console category.
Now we have a vaccine, and and there is hope of recovery, and people start going out again. To what extent will that dent the gaming market?
Oh, I think gaming. First of all, specifically to the new consoles coming out in the gaming category in general. The gaming category in general has been a very hot category for several years. The console category specifically has been a lot of older iron out there, so to speak, and there's been a tremendous amount of pent-up demand for that. I don't really think the pandemic has just, I think, thrown more fuel on the fire for more demand because kids are staying home. Parents absolutely want to use gaming as a way of being able to take care of their kids because they're home all the time. So I don't really see that as, even as the pandemic starts to ebb, I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. And honestly, the content in this category of the games that are coming online, especially with these new consoles, are really going to be incredible from an excitement standpoint. Microsoft has made a major investment in studios. That's going to start to pay big results over the next 12 months or so as new fresh content comes out, because that's really the name of the game in the gaming category. So I don't see that changing. I don't really see as the pandemic ebbs away that somehow the momentum is going to slow down. And then mainstream gaming that's occurring in the mobile space, that's also taking off in a very, very big way. That's only going to become much more stronger as the new iPhone 12s get launched. Apple has a service called Arcade, which is very, very popular and will grow in popularity. But that appeals to a much more mainstream, I wouldn't say elderly, that's probably a little bit unkind because I don't want to hurt your feelings. But at the same time, it appeals to a different type of person who's really playing Assassin's Creed on the Xbox, for example.
La Xbox de Microsoft et la PlayStation 5 de Sony sont toutes deux confrontées à des préventes énormes compte tenu de la pandémie. Mais selon Marc Vena de More Insights and Strategy, que vous venez d'entendre à l'instant, la Xbox pourrait avoir un léger avantage sur la PS5 cette année. Et l'info de la semaine, c'est évidemment Pfizer et son vaccin à 90% fiable. Les Américains se pressent à mettre en place un plan de distribution. The US government announces that COVID-19 vaccines should be ready for most vulnerable late this year for everyone by spring. HHS Secretary Alex Azar was live on CNBC to discuss the vaccine timeline.
Contracted with Pfizer for 100 million doses, and that'll start rolling to us 20 million a month starting the end of this month. Pfizer's projected approximately 40 million doses by the end of this year. We will have to look at the data and look at those core target groups, but be thinking the most vulnerable, your elderly in nursing homes, assisted living, and then be thinking your healthcare workers and your first responders as those core initial groups that we've received recommendations to focus on. Try to get them vaccinated according to whatever the data provides on Pfizer, and if we get Moderna to come in the next couple of weeks, we'd have that in our toolkit also. So we've said that we would have enough by the end of this year to vaccinate all of the most vulnerable, by the end of January to vaccinate all senior citizens as well as first responders and healthcare workers, and then by the end of March, early April, enough across all of our vaccine portfolio to have for every American who would like to be vaccinated. Yeah. That's the timeline we're working from. The particulars are going to depend on seeing that data and just seeing where does it look most effective, which population is it most effective and safe in.
It's great news. It's a tribute to the private sector and to our scientists and to the Trump administration in terms of Operation Warp Speed, faster than it's ever been done before. It's phenomenal. But Pfizer seems to be taking great pains to say, well, they signed on to Operation Warp Speed but never took any money. Have you seen that? Is that they're parsing that? I don't know why it's important to them that they distinguish not being part of it. Maybe they're worried about being tainted with political, that it was rushed or whatever the controversy surrounding vaccines are. But they didn't take any money, but were they part of Operation Warp Speed, Mr. Secretary?
Yeah, so they actually corrected that statement during the day yesterday. I don't know why they made that originally. I've got a $2 billion contract for 100 million doses and an option for 500 million more that says they're very much part of Operation Warp Speed. We assisted them with ingredients. We're assisting them with distribution, syringes, needles, dry ice for shipment, distribution, planning. Oh no, they're very much part of Operation Warp Speed.
Le secrétaire à la santé et aux services sociaux, Alex Azar, déclare que la disponibilité des vaccins pourrait également dépendre de la rapidité de la production du vaccin par les laboratoires. Le transport du vaccin pourrait aussi être un frein. Le produit injectable doit absolument respecter une chaîne du froid extrêmement réglementée, un défi même pour les hôpitaux les plus sophistiqués des États-Unis. Does Pfizer's vaccine news mean the economy needs less stimulus? À la suite de la nouvelle d'un vaccin à 90% fiable, les républicains au Congrès souhaitent réduire le montant d'un prochain plan de relance budgétaire. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said that Congress should pass a limited stimulus bill by year end.
Good change in Washington, but the question is whether we are about me or about we. If it's a conversation about me, then the debate and the arguments that are really locking up Washington, keeping them from seeing that this is necessary for our business plan, will continue, and confidence will erode. If it's about we, i.e. after the Great Depression, the New Deal, after World War II, the new Marshall Plan, then folks will come together and see that we need to stop the bickering and get on with a business plan, because a vaccine for my small businesses actually looks like cash flow, looks like some short-term stimulus. They need to pay rent and mortgages right now. So, yes, I'm hopeful, but it depends on what happens in the next few weeks, in my opinion.
Kevin, I know that you have been against more stimulus, but I would argue to you before it might have looked like a bridge to nowhere. Now it might be a bridge to somewhere. Is your view different?
No, it isn't. At this point, given that we now have a firm timetable between therapeutics and a combination of vaccines, you have to make the assumption as an investor that probably 50% of the population will be inoculated by the end of December next year. And you have to start preparing as an investor towards that. What I would like to see is zero PPP, no more for businesses. And let me clarify that. That's different than providing unemployment insurance to the massive shift, because I believe 20% of small businesses are going to fail in the next year, not because of the pandemic. It's because consumer preferences have changed in many, many sectors. And we can't guess who the winners and losers are. So to cushion the blow to the employees, I don't care what sector you want to pick, the airline industry, the cruise line industry, the movie theater chains, who cares? The point is, those employees that are being displaced, yes, let's provide unemployment insurance for them, but $0 to the shareholders of those businesses. $0. They took the risk in the first place. The market is providing all kinds of liquidity in lenders and debt and equity. You saw the airlines go up 20% yesterday. Let them issue shares if they wish, but we're done providing free money from the sky. We don't need to. We have to let the market determine the efficiencies now by letting some assets go bankrupt and others being managed by good managers acquiring those assets. The PPP should be over. Zero. Done.
Les démocrates s'insurgent. Selon eux, cette nouvelle ne change rien à la situation dégradante du pays. En début de semaine, la Chambre de commerce américaine a demandé au Congrès de trouver un accord avant la fin de l'année. Les États-Unis comptent toujours plus de 11 millions de travailleurs au chômage. Une moitié de l'Amérique semble d'ailleurs avoir mis le sujet des élections de côté. Ce n'est pas le cas pour Donald Trump et ses partisans qui pensent toujours pouvoir gagner avant la validation du collège électoral le 14 décembre. Let's check where things stand in the Electoral College right now.
Yeah, Shep, it's really interesting. You know, 4 years ago, we talked about how the polls were all wrong and it allowed Donald Trump to eke out a win. You start to look at this map and you see Biden's going to win, and Biden's going to win the popular vote by an even larger margin than Hillary Clinton. But when you look at the Electoral College, the polls were wrong again. And there was a path there for Donald Trump that he almost snuck through again. So here's where things are right now, 279, 214. If you just play this out, Biden leads in Arizona, Biden leads in Georgia. If he hangs on there, and if Trump hangs on in Alaska and North Carolina, that's probably the most likely finish to this thing. That's what the Electoral College count will look like, 306, 232. That's the flip of 2016 when Trump got 306 and it was Biden that got and Clinton that got 232. Interestingly, though, you think of those final polls. Remember national polls with Biden leading by 10, polls with Biden up in Florida, Texas, Ohio, Iowa. Trump carried a lot of those states that the polls, showed Biden with a shot in. And even you could look at Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. Just go through these three states very quickly here. Look at where the results are right now. It's 20,000 votes for Biden in Wisconsin. It's about 10,000, a little bit more in Georgia. And it's about 15,000 in Arizona. If that holds, those three states, had they gone the other way, had they gone for Trump, he'd be tied in the Electoral College, positioned to win the presidency in the House, a swing of 45,000 votes in three states. We might be looking at a tie right now.
That sounds even closer than last year. And what about down ballot races? Really wasn't a good night at all for the Democrats.
That's the interesting thing. Democrats had this vision of just a repudiation of not just Trump, but of the Republican Party. And I think this one got lost a little on election night. But think of the Senate. Republicans came in with a 53-47 majority. You had Democrats talking about gaining 4, 5, 6 seats. What ended up happening? Democrats right now have a net gain of 1. Now, it looks like you'll have some runoffs in Georgia in January. Last chance for Democrats to get the Senate with a President Biden will be to go 2 for 2 in those Georgia runoffs in January. And then this was the real surprise of the night, too. Down ballot, the House. Democrats came in with a healthy majority. They thought they'd add 10 or 20 seats. Right now, the Republican gain is 5 and counting.
Wow, incredible. By the way, you've become very popular. I'm reading these headlines. See this? Map Daddy and Chart Throb. How's that going over?
That's not the usual language I'm used to seeing to describe me, but it's been quite a week, Shep. I never knew so many people cared about maps and numbers, but I love it.
I wonder if you'll be getting any new khakis in the mail,
We'll take a look for that.
Part of the uniform.
Certains républicains, dont le chef de la majorité au Sénat, Mitch McConnell, se sont ralliés aux efforts de Trump pour lutter contre les résultats des élections. Rares sont ceux au sein du parti qui ont reconnu la victoire de Joe Biden. Thank you all for being with us. Merci à tous d'avoir participé à ce format 100% hybride. See you very soon for the rest of international news.